Hey there, and welcome to Google's Innovation for the Nation 2013. I'm Christopher Dorobek, the anchor and managing editor of GovLoop's Dorobek Insider, an online program that and blog, we're a blog too, that focuses on 6 words, helping government do its job better. And that is exactly what we have been focused on here today, helping you do your job better. We're doing that by introducing you to amazing transformers. Sounds like it should be a Hollywood movie. The people who are out there finding ways to get their jobs done in what we can, I think, somewhat easily called challenging times out there these days. We're going to talk about collaboration and working better together. All of us are smarter than each of us individually, right? And we're also going to introduce you to one of the GCN Awards winners. They're being recognized tonight, so we'll introduce you to him in just a moment. And we want to hear from you. If you have questions or comments, there are 2 ways you can reach us. You can submit questions here in the virtual conference center. You just go to the networking lounge within the event, and there's a button that says Ask a Question. Just use that. Or you can tweet us. Use our hashtag IFTN2013, Innovation for the Nation 2013. Or you can tweet me directly at CDorobek. We will answer as many of your questions as we possibly can in the next half hour. But if we don't get to those, there will be an opportunity to chat with these gentlemen right afterwards. So we'll tell you more about that later on. We've had a number of great conversations already today. We've talked about mobility and security. Well, not a challenge at all there. We've talked about finding needles in all those haystacks and how you can use search to do that. Pretty cool. If you've missed any of these discussions, they'll all be online, on demand, if you will, on the Google Federal YouTube page. And if you register, we'll send a link right to you, and it'll make it nice and easy. A bit of a preview of what we still have ahead. We're going to talk about automating business processes. How many have had to do those horrible reviews of your personnel reviews? Awful, right? How would you like to automate those? Well, we're going to talk about that just ahead. And engaging users with innovative web apps. We'll talk to an agency, an organization that actually did it. But let's talk collaboration. As I say, one of the GCN Award winners, one of the folks out there actually doing it during these challenging times. Let me introduce Mike Wash. He is the Chief Information Officer at the National Archives and Record Administration, and Steve Cousin. He is a Vice President at Unisys for Cloud, Email, and Collaboration Services. Mike, tell us. Well, let's start off just basically for people who they know National Archives, but they don't know why cloud. Why did you do this? Tell us what you did first off.
Well, what we did was we actually migrated our existing on-premise email system, which was GroupWise, into a cloud environment with Google Apps for Government. And we approached it knowing that it was time for us to really upgrade our systems from a legacy system. And we wanted to really be out in front and be an innovator within the government and start to investigate better ways of providing collaborative environments, an innovative approach to actually getting access to information, wherever and whenever you wanted it, and make it as easy as possible. So a couple of years ago, we started investigating the options that we would have, and we looked at additional on-premise types of solutions as well as cloud solutions. And it was very clear to us early on that cloud was the best way to go for a number of reasons. And we started aggressively moving into a project of upgrading our email system from actually GroupWise, which was probably a very difficult transition, and Stephen can speak to that, onto the Google Apps for Government. So we did it really to modernize the agency and make it so that we are more capable and collaborative as a team here at the National Archives.
And the drivers for that, I know one of them was mobility. One of them was it was time to it was an old system that you were using, and so it was time to just modernize it. But was there an idea that you wanted to do things better, faster, be more agile, essentially?
Absolutely. It was certainly time, but for us, the National Archives needs to be in a position where we are actually helping to establish better ways of doing things for the federal government, since we touch all other agencies within the federal government, since we receive their records. And for us to have a dated legacy type of system was challenging for us to be positioned as a leader. So we knew we had to really get out there and be known as an innovative agency. But we also wanted to make sure that we were enabling as much collaboration as possible within staff. And a cloud type of environment was clearly the way to do it. And the capabilities within the Google Suite for the Google Apps for federal government was certainly a prime candidate.
I know people sometimes hear cloud and they start panicking, and security and all these things start getting in the way. How did you resolve some of the, I'm sure, almost panic within National Archives in and of itself?
Well, panic is probably a good way to put it. There's, I think there's always healthy skepticism whenever you consider doing something different, and particularly when you start moving some of your vital data off-site into a cloud, the healthy skepticism kicks in overdrive. So what we did was we approached it head on. We knew that we needed a secure environment. Fortunately, within the federal government, we had the guidelines within FISMA and the FedRAMP initiative that provided a framework for us to really proceed. So we didn't have to go and break a lot of new ground. There was already great stuff being done within the federal government to establish what would be an acceptable level of capability. And we stipulated very clearly what our expectations were so that we would be in complete compliance with the FISMA guidelines, and also put additional constraints on as required to ensure that our data would be secure. And we worked really very closely with our general counsel's office and our acquisition staff and our IT security staff, which became a core team to make sure that every step of the way we were not missing anything. Plus, working with Unisys, who was our integrator, looking at what other examples were of other agencies going through migration similar to this. So we went in eyes wide open and knowing that we wanted to have a secure environment.
Steve, before we get into some of the integration issues, and I do want to get to those, but talk a little bit about what Mike has just been talking about. Why do this? Why take all these solutions into a cloud?
Right, Chris. As Mike said, the innovative capabilities are there now. Networking and advancements in computing really make the cloud model very viable. We see a lot of the federal agencies already going that way. We see state and local agencies going that way as well. So the economics are being proven over and over again, and these are multi-year type of models that are being shown. So the utility model of what the cloud provides and being able to use a community cloud like Google Apps really helps to drive it home. And we were able to do that and integrate it into other clouds just to show the extendability of that type of savings.
And I hear anecdotally, and I'm going to ask Mike about it in just a moment, but I hear that once you roll out email, also all these other collaboration tools, all of a sudden people start using them in ways that almost you didn't predict.
That's right, yeah, and that's another benefit of the latest technologies around cloud email. You really can't say cloud email without mentioning collaboration. It's really more around cloud collaboration. And these products, especially Google Apps, provides this very easy to access, browser-based ability to integrate and collaborate with your team members inside agencies and outside agencies as well.
Mike, talk a little bit about that collaboration. And I've heard from other agencies that have made these steps that they've really found that there are collaborative things that happen that almost they couldn't have predicted.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true. And to be really fair and honest, I think from the National Archives perspective, and I probably speak for a lot of other agencies that are in the process of moving into collaborative cloud environments, we're really in the early stages of understanding how powerful collaboration is. When you go from more of a client-based type of mail system and client-based tools where you do your own work and share it via email like we've been accustomed to more of a collaborative environment where you can actually real-time update documents with a group of people and watch the changes take place. you're really working at multiples of productivity because you can not only talk about it and share it, but you see it happening real time. The effectiveness of that is just remarkable, and I think
I always love to watch people's faces when they first experience that. Somebody else writing in quote unquote their document, and
then they start pointing. They start pointing at it.
Who's writing in my doc? It's an interesting
they say, wait a minute,
experience.
that's not what I said. But that type of thing, just imagine the amount of time it saves when you actually experience that. And say, well, wait a minute, that's not what I meant. Let me try it. That type of productivity improvement is the tip of the iceberg. And I think documents is one thing. And, the collaboration in the past has been things like, oh, you've shared a calendar so you can see when somebody might be available. Now it's I'm sharing my thoughts real time, and I'm sharing an experience of developing something real time. That's what collaboration is all about, where you actually start to get the power of doing things in a very, very effective and accelerated way.
I want to talk a little bit about how you actually did this, and actually I'm going to start by reading from the GCN piece, recognizing your work. They say few agencies are more steeped in tradition than the National Archives and Records Administration. That's why a project it undertook last year to move to a cloud-based email and collaboration system has been more disruptive and more transformative than most. This wasn't necessarily easy, but has been very powerful. Talk a little bit about getting from where you were to getting to where you are now. How hard was it?
It was difficult, but it went at absolutely record pace. It was difficult because the amount of information that we had to migrate, the systems that we had to migrate from, were not, simple challenges to undertake. The really good part about the project overall is I think that there was a tremendous amount of planning that was done. Again, the lessons learned from what other agencies had done, the type of work here at NARA we did in preparing and understanding what it is we had to do. And then also, I think that part was a lot of heavy lifting that people a lot of times overlook. But it's absolutely required to plan and make sure that you understand everything as best you can, because you will still come up with things that you didn't anticipate. But then we established a very aggressive schedule. We said, we want to get this thing done. We want to get it done quick, because dealing with two different email systems and some people sharing accounts is not really good. So we set very aggressive goals. Unisys was right there with us, helping us achieve those, and we moved all of our agency in a matter of months, which is remarkable, with very, very few glitches.
Steve, talk a little bit about both the National Archives and also you've done this before. What do the folks who do it right, what do they do, and what are the things that you went in and said, you may not want to do this?
Right, yeah, and I'd have to say, I'd echo Mike's thoughts. I mean, his leadership and the leadership team of the National Archives was extremely collaborative. We were very fortunate in that regards, and we go into these engagements looking for a collaboration amongst our folks in Unisys as the systems integrator, and the agency leadership team as well, and the subject matter experts, because obviously we don't go in knowing everything about the mission and about the business, and they help us understand that, and we help them understand the different options that you can do with the cloud migration. Here's pros, here's cons, here's maybe what's worked in the past, here's what we might recommend you avoid. So Mike's team was very collaborative in that respect, including the legal team and the other people around the records management policies and those decisions. And like he said, that amount of work was extensive in the beginning to understand what policies need to be made, what decisions needed to be made. And then additionally, the National Archives had special requirements that required an additional integration with the records management cloud, in addition to a mobility cloud. And as we integrated those three clouds into the National Archives directory structure, we were able to integrate additional security products and get additional authentication products. So the requirements were quite extensive, but we found them very innovative and very exciting to work on.
This Google Hangout technology is working quite well because Steve is reading my mind. I want to talk about archiving and I want to talk about mobility. But before we do that, are there things that Mike talked about spending a lot of time planning, and that enabled this whole process to go very quickly? Is that something that you find works really well?
Absolutely. What we find, and it really kind of started off with our first engagement with the GSA, the General Services Administration, with Casey Coleman, and the idea about working hand in hand with the agency to define strategic communications. The Office of the CIO knows why they want to do this, and so we help them get that on tape or recorded videos and distribute that with pamphlets and things to make sure that the agency employees understand why we're doing it and echo that message from the CIO. We also work on tactical communications. You can't emphasize enough the importance of communicating to the users. Here's what's coming. Here's the things you need to do to prepare. And we focus on a lot of tactical comms and deployment comms as well. So all that goes into the overarching planning, and there's an entire integrated project team dedicated for that type of communication. And that helps significantly in the way that users adopt the technology and you want them to be comfortable with it.
I know, Mike, that part of that communications was essentially rolling this out in a way that you had these early users, the people who just were like so antsy to try something new, get them involved first, and then the people who have used Google before. Talk a little bit about how you got a change management approach that worked.
Well, we did very similar to what you just said. We adopted a group of the early users, the ones that were anxious to use it, and that actually provided a lot of insights into some things that would be coming up. Things associated with synchronizing the old mail system and the old calendaring system, how to deal with these two systems at the same time. And that proved to be very, very useful. A lot of issues that could have been more of a disaster, frankly, if we hadn't done that approach, were found early on with people that were probably more accommodating to it, knowing that they were some of the early trial users. And I forced myself, into that group. They didn't want me there, but I forced myself in because I like to test things and try to break things. It's part of my background as a former quality engineer. So I put myself into that community, and it actually, I think, worked out very well, and I would recommend that other people and other agencies have some senior executives as a part of their early adopters, because, my calendar was a little bit more complex than others. The amount of communications and things that I had to do was sometimes more difficult. So I was exposing things that would be somewhat on the fringe of a typical early adopter community, and that actually exposed things that we had to fix along the way. But I think you have to select people that are willing to take that risk and know that things aren't going to be exactly perfect along the way. But I think that rollout, which actually also went very fast, and we did that purposefully, that there would be short durations for these periods of early adopter, and then the next wave, and then the final wave, proved to be very effective. And by the time we got to actually into the second wave, most of the issues had been resolved, and there were a few others. And by the time we got to the third wave, it was really just a matter of plugging through the population and getting them all online.
Let me, of course, records and archives are built right into your name, and so when you looked at whatever option you decided to go in, that had to be part of it, right? Talk about how you dealt with that.
It was an absolute part of it, and we looked at it as an opportunity as well. And what we had as one of our legacy systems, we, being a records archives administration, we have been experimenting with some other types of archival records management tools, electronic records management tools. And what that actually did was create an opportunity for us to migrate from other systems into the new archive, which actually posed some problems at points, but we got through that too. But we wanted to not only move our systems into a cloud environment for the collaboration and all of the near-term benefits that we've talked about, But as the National Archives, we wanted to be a precedent and also a leader, saying these are the types of things that we're doing and recommend to the rest of the federal government to do to manage their electronic email records. So we created a parallel archival system, electronic archival system that works in conjunction with Google Apps for Government. And what that has done for us is actually created this redundancy, which will allow us to start to create very seamless ways of managing records, particularly when they start to get submitted to an archive. So essentially every email that's sent or received to and from the National Archives is automatically journaled. And the records officers here at the National Archives have set rules or guidelines for how to manage those records. And people can go in and mark an email as non-record, etc. But those rules become seamless to typical users. They just go about their business on a day-to-day basis, and then these rules are running in the background determining which of their email is a permanent record and which is not, based on the rule set. Then, when it comes time for the records to get submitted to an archive through an accessioning process, or moving those records into the archives as a custody, that move could be so easy and so seamless, since it's already been managed up front without any extra intervention from users, that the records officers within agencies can rest assured that that transfer process could be done very cost effectively and very efficiently and happen, whenever it's needed. It has the potential for saving the federal government a tremendous amount of money.
Wow, awesome. Steve, were there particular technical challenges in rolling out this version?
Yeah, I mean, well, with every engagement, we've done several now. I think we're on our fifth one in the federal government, and each one has required a certain amount of systems integration for sure, and having the ability to understand that and develop custom scripts is an advantage that we think we bring. And in one case here, certainly finding and collecting all of the past archives, personal storage of emails from GroupWise was interesting. There was about 3,000 of those, and one of our chief architects wrote a program to go out and find those amongst 50 different or 30 different servers, talk to the directory and understand who owns these files, and then develop a script to actually convert them into an ingestible type of format so that we can ingest them into the records management system or back into Google Apps. So those aren't insurmountable issues. It's just that issues that we need to understand how to address, and then we lay out the design. We vet those with Mike and his team during these integrated project teams, and we decide on the right plan of action, and then we go ahead and do that. So fortunately, we've been able to get each one of these done fine. It's just that you always find some level of systems integration that needs to happen, and especially as Mike talked about, these extra clouds that we integrated to make sure that it was seamless to the user.
Yeah. Mike, talk a little bit about the mobility aspect of this, because I know this was one of the drivers. Your previous system was not really mobile accessible, was it?
No, it wasn't. We had Blackberries, and we had our own managed BES, the BlackBerry Enterprise Server, for a limited number of people here at the National Archives, and we knew that wasn't going to be sufficient in the long run. With the desire by the federal users and contractors to be able to have different types of devices and the flexibility that brings. So our mobile environment is configured in a way that is going to enable us to be able to expand into other types of mobile devices in addition to the BES type of environment. The first step that we took was to actually create a replacement BES with our BlackBerry base of users, and the next steps will be to move into the Android and the Apple and other types of devices. We have some of those devices running today, but it's not a large population at this point in time.
I know one of the things that was a little bit of a challenge was the terms of service question, and talk a little bit about that and how you dealt with that. And
well, the terms of service is where we really get involved with our general counsel. And as Steve was saying earlier, the team here at NARA, it was really just a fabulous team, and still is. But they were engaged, they were can-do, they were very collaborative, and that included our general counsel staff. And the primary general counsel that was a part of the team is actually coming to the award gala tonight as one of the key members. She was very, very instrumental in establishing the terms of service, or negotiating the terms of service, or specifying the terms of service. And a lot of the terms of service was based on, and I'm thinking more about the security aspects, was based on the security requirements of the federal government and the security aspects that we have here as well. So those terms were structured and created specifically for the approach that we were taking, and realizing, as Steve had pointed out, that we had multiple clouds that we were connecting together, which just added some additional complexity to the terms of service overall. But I think it worked really well.
Yeah.
There were things to discuss and decide, but there were never any situations that were like, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work. It was.
Shakespeare always said, take out the lawyers first, but in the government framework, embrace them, have them part of the early team, because
yes.
Every successful project that I've seen, that tends to work much better.
Yes, you have to do that.
We're rapidly running out of time, so I want to essentially have you guys give folks who may be hearing this story and say, what do we do next? We want to move beyond where we are and get to someplace else. Steve, what do you recommend to those folks? What should they be thinking about?
Those that are considering moving, have the conversation with any one of the SIs that have done this work before. We know that the CIOs talk together and they collaborate together. Contact the agencies that have moved and learn more about their experiences, pros and cons. And feel free to contact Unisys or other SIs. We can come in and tell you, here's what we've learned. We do an entire review of lessons learned, and here's the recommended path forward. So I think just to find out more about the actual implementations, more so than just theory, get to the actual people that have done it and talk to them about it.
And a lot of planning involved in order to get to where you need to be. Mike, you CIOs actually talk to each other?
Yeah, once in a while. We try to cut it down, but yeah, we usually try to talk to one another.
So your recommendations for folks trying to get where the National Archives is now would be?
I think very similar to what Steve said. I think talking with other agencies that have been through it is critical. We did that, a lot. We went and found out. At all levels. The terms of service, the lawyer-to-lawyer conversation, the project manager to project manager. So across the board, there was discussions. And make sure you do good planning. And don't forget about data migration. Of typical digital systems and information systems, data migration from legacy system to new system always, in my experience, turns out to be a challenge. And go into it knowing that you're going to have challenges and try to mitigate the risks as quickly as and most effectively as possible.
I want to thank Mike Walsh of the National Archives, and congratulations on the GCN recognition. Nice job. And also
Thank
Steve
you.
Cousins of Unisys. Great job here as well. Thank you very much. We did get two questions from Twitter that I didn't have time to answer. One was more of a comment, wondering if there's a way we can get new collaborative technologies up on Capitol Hill. We'll just let that ride. But Book Hunt did ask if there are new practices, if these best practices in the cloud, this collaboration, if it improved accountability and transparency of workflows. We didn't have time to get it. Maybe you'll touch on it in your chat. With that, I will let you know that there is Mike and Steve will be doing a chat. You can hang out with them. Well, not hang out, but chat with them in the virtual conference center. There's that, amongst other things that you want to talk about. They're right there. And all of these sessions will be available on demand on the Google Federal YouTube site. If you registered, we'll send you the link. And coming up, we're going to talk about automating business processes. it's a great case study, so we're going to talk about that just ahead. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Steve. Great hanging out with you here at Google's Innovation of the Nation. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks, Chris.